All right, welcome everyone to another community meeting with Activist San Diego, ASD. I am Yusef Miller. I'm the Executive Director of Activist San Diego, and I am talking to you from Pennsylvania, from the land of the traditional lands of the Lenape. And I know you guys over there are on the traditional lands of the Payakumweechum and the um, Kumeyaay nations. So we want to make sure that we acknowledge and recognize that these are unceded territories to our indigenous brothers and sisters, a land which we need to treat with respect and honor, and we honor those first inhabitants of this lands that we're standing on to give this presentation. This presentation is really important. It's a what's happening now in San Diego County kind of presentation. Families who are affected now in San Diego County as we speak, who are suffering, who are fighting for justice and trying to make changes in legislation, and this is going on now. So it's not something as theoretical. It's something that you can actually participate in and move the needle forward because the bills that we're going to discuss are actually in the works as we speak up in the legislature. So I'll give you a background to understand where we're coming from. This is the Saving Lives in Custody campaign that we're speaking about today. And as the executive director of the North County Equity and Justice Coalition, we started the Saving Lives in Custody campaign in 2020. So the Saving Lives in Custody campaign, we shorten it out to just say the SLICK campaign sometimes. This this campaign started because of the high in custody death rate that was noticed by our campaign and many others before us, but we consolidated an actual campaign around it in San Diego, which had a really high in custody death rate at the time. And we got started with the incident of Elisa Serna. Elisa Serna lost her life in custody in 2019. And when we saw that no one was going to be held accountable and that it seemed like it would just be swept under the rug, the SLICK campaign jumped into action, got to the press, the community. We put out the word to all of San Diego, and all of San Diego responded that absolutely someone has to be responsible for the loss of life. She's not responsible for her own death, as the law enforcement and the DA and all these entities try to make it seem. And because of you, San Diego, you jumped in behind the families and said, we will not accept that as an answer. As we went to the CLRB, the Civilian Law Enforcement Review Board. Now, this board is responsible for complaints against the Sheriff's Department, and the Sheriff's Department are responsible for running the jails. So you, San Diego, you came in behind us and supported us as we asked for transparency and accountability on the life of Elisa Serna. And that was started in 2020. And the ball just kept on rolling. Families seeing that we're standing up for loved ones who have been lost have been standing up beside us. They've been emboldened to say, this has happened to my family member too. They said that it was my family member's fault that they lost their life. It's my family member's fault that they had whatever substance, or all these kinds of crazy statements that they were saying, blaming the victim. But we raised the alarm really loud, and people took notice. Our political allies took notice, our other activist allies took notice, and this went all the way up to Dr. Akilah Weber's office, and she took notice as well. And the state level took notice. And what they did was they asked for an audit, a state audit on the in custody death rate in San Diego County. And at the time, we were the highest in custody death rate in the state of California. Our county, San Diego County, was the highest in custody death rate last year in the whole state of California. So the audit came in from the state level, and they investigated the in custody death issues, what's going on around it. And it took about a year. They're going through all of these things. They did a wide search of the in custody death rate, and they came out with a determination in 2021. In 2021, February, they said that the Sheriff's Department was responsible for not preventing the deaths of these people, responsible for not preventing the deaths. What does this mean? That means that they could have done something that would have saved lives. They could have had policies and procedures in place that would have mitigated this high in custody death rate. This was scathing. The same day that that report hit the street, The sheriff of San Diego County retired that same day. That was the previous sheriff, Bill Gore. He retired that same day. Of course, you know, he knew what was coming out on the streets, and he retired that same day. So then we had an interim sheriff until the new do nothing sheriff is there now, Kelly Martinez. So in that interim period, that's when Dr. Akilah Weber, she made a bill. It was at the time called AB 2343 and named after the campaign. It was called the Saving Lives in Custody Act, AB 2343. And it was to make changes in the jail so that people will be survivable, so they could survive in custody. Remember, a lot of these people died before their first day in court, some after only one day in court, which means they died innocent, because in this country, you are innocent until proven guilty. These people are dying within custody before their first day at court. So we're trying to make the experience of making this mistake, that you have to be incarcerated if you made a mistake. Sometimes you can be arrested for not even being your fault. But no matter what the case is, once you're behind bars and in the sheriff's custody, your life is a ticking time bomb, because you could lose your life in custody. So she wanted to make changes in this act, and she wanted to ask for the board, the BSCC, the Board of State and Community Corrections, that's over the state of jails, to make some changes. Two of the changes seems like it makes common sense, to put a board member that is a specialist in mental health, and put a board member that is a specialist in medical health to oversee the jails. This seems like a common sense request from AB 2343. But according to the governor, those two seats will cost too much money and make the board too big. He vetoed this bill. Now, this bill at that time went through the Republicans, it went through the Democrats. Everybody was on board with this. It sailed through all the way up to the governor's desk, and we felt that he stabbed us in the back. And we had a press conference calling him out for denying these two seats, because we say every family member who lost a loved one due to mental health crisis or due to medical health crises would have said that those two seats were worth it. Those two seats were absolutely worth it. So after he vetoed that, we had to put that bill in again. Dr. Akilah Weber, she did not back off. She resubmitted it, and it had to come with a different number. And this year, the number is AB 268. Same bill, they just had to change the number. So we need everyone's support behind this bill. And I'm going to discuss another bill right after this one. We need people to support this bill. And what the bill also asks for is that there be a trained person in intake to evaluate people for mental health, to make sure they're going into the right section. You know, some people don't require incarceration, they require services. And because we're incarcerating people, in the jails are not designed, nor were they intended to be a place of mental health wellness, people are losing their lives in custody. So Dr. Akilah Weber wanted someone trained, a trained specialist, to be there specifically to make sure that the intakes, they are classifying people correctly. So that process is going forward. Please keep your eye out for AB 268 and ask your leaders to support it, and you vote for and push these bills right to your elected officials to support AB 268 by Dr. Akilah Weber. At the same time, shortly after this, Senator Atkins, she put forth a bill, SB 519. SB 519 is a similar bill to help with in custody death rate. And this bill, it creates an independent office, a state monitor, to come in and take over the responsibilities of the sheriff's department if they're not doing their jobs. And that way administrate the jails in a way that people can survive in custody death rates. So this bill is going through the process, and you know the sheriff's department, the state sheriff's department, they are not for AB 519. They are not for AB 268, but we have to push that envelope. But it's it's a common sense bill. Both of these are common sense bills, and it creates SB 519 creates an independent office to investigate in custody deaths and to monitor the jails and report to the state, to the governor annually. And it also inspects the policies and procedures of the facility that has the in custody death rate, which would be us. Us and Riverside is number 2, and LA County, these high in custody death rate counties. Another thing that SB 519 does is that it increases transparency. The critical incident report is a report that says what happened in this in custody death rate. What are the details? What happened to this person that caused them to lose their life? It is asking for those transparencies to be given to the families, to be given to the press in a timely manner. So we have families who didn't get information on their loved ones for over a year, sometimes over 2 years, not knowing. This is an insult to injury. These families are suffering, not knowing what happened to their loved ones. And to make it matters worse, law enforcement will not release it. Even though they have the conclusion already, they will not release it to the families, and the families suffer, and they're tortured by this. So SB 519 creates more transparency. It has requirements for the BSCC, and it also has an independent monitor to come in and take over from the jails if they are not doing their job keeping people safe, which is their constitutional right in custody. And let me just add, there are people that hear our fight and hear our plight, and there's rude and unjust people all over the world, but there are heartless people who even speak out to our family members, blaming the victims of what issues that they may have had that precipitated them going into custody. But what we say is a lot of those issues did not require handcuffs. They did not require in custody. They require treatment. They require programs. So we have people dying from mental health, which is not their fault. We have people that are drug addicted, which who need counseling. They need programs. We have people dying from medical issues, not receiving their medication on time. And these issues are being classified as natural deaths. What's natural about having a heart attack, but you had a heart attack because you didn't get your medication on time? That is not natural. What is natural about having a seizure, falling onto your head from the third bunk because you didn't get your seizure medicine on time? That is not natural causes. What is the natural cause of someone getting drugs into jails, a secure facility where nothing is supposed to enter that jail, and they get it in jail anyway? That is their responsibility, not the person using, the person who has the addiction. So we need a real soul search for our communities to understand that we are not pro-criminal, we are not pro-crime, we are pro-accountability, and we're pro-transparency. Transparency is not the enemy here. So as I move on, we see that as an overall overarching umbrella is that there are over-policing in our communities, over-policing of mental health, over-policing of the homeless, over-policing of addiction, and these put people in a situation that overburdens the incarceration system, and that system is not designed to take care of those problems. And what we're seeing is loss of life of loved ones. And on the other hand, we have loved ones who are incarcerated who are still living. There are people who are still living, who are incarcerated, who are running the risk every day of losing their lives. And not only will we seek justice for those who have lost their lives from a preventable death, but also to help those who are incarcerated survive in custody, survive that in custody experience before the ultimate happens to them. So that's what we're here for. And I just wanted to ground you at what we've been fighting for since 2020. These families, they've turned their pain into progress. They've been fighting, and they've been rallying, and they've been championing, and they've been having all kinds of events like this. They are actually activists. People see them as, oh, they're just family members who need your support. No, this is muscle. Every single family member that has joined the SLICK campaign is muscle, and they come through and they flex their bicep. You should see them out there in action. They're just power. So don't look at them as you need to pity them or anything like that. What you need to do is take the situation serious and back us up while we fight up that chain to change legislation. I want to introduce some of our family members who are present. I just wanted to lay the groundwork. I don't want to do too much talking. I'm going to turn it over to the families now, but I wanted to give you that history and that background because I want the families to talk from their personal experience and not have them go over this part that I had to go over to lay the context. And I'll just mention some of the family members who are here with us, and those, and there's some online as well, the ones who couldn't make it in person, but in no particular order. I'll say that we have the Cerna family, Paloma Cerna, Deanna Cerna, Michael Cerna, Star Cerna. The Cerna family are the family of Elisa Cerna, who I said was the beginning and the kickoff of the Saving Lives in Custody campaign. Also, we have Sean Mills, the sister of Kevin Mills, and he lost his life in custody as well, and she'll give you the background on that. We have David Settles, the brother of Matthew Settles, who lost his life in custody as well. He's also in the audience in person today. We also have, who couldn't make it in person today, I can't see them if they are there, but I'll just mention Gilbert Gill. He lost his life in Vista Detention Center. We have Raymond Vogelman, who lost his life in jail in the San Diego in custody system. Paul Silva lost his life in custody jail center, and so many others that are part of the Saving Lives in Custody family team. But not only the people who have lost their lives, we have people who are struggling and fighting with us every day. And we have Cheryl Canson and her sons that are in custody right now, and we are trying to preserve their lives and make sure that they don't meet the same fate of the ones that we are fighting for. Also, Gina Burns was fighting for her son, and he has been going through and both of their sons have been going through decades of improper treatment, mental health treatment, and a revolving door in this situation. So right from here, I'm going to turn it over to the families, and I will let's see, the way I'll do it, I'll just start from who I can see, and I'll start from Sabrina's side of the room. I know Sabrina was like, I know he's gonna call me, right? Yeah, I'm gonna call you. So Sabrina, I'll go with Sabrina, and then we'll go to her right, down the aisle there, and let the families explain what has brought them to this situation. Number one, what has brought you to this situation, and two, what do you think the impact of these bills will have on not only your loved one, but the future of in custody deaths?
Okay, so again, I'm Sabrina Weddle, the older sister of Saxon Rodriguez. Saxon Rodriguez died in San Diego County Jail in July 20th, 2021. And he passed away from fentanyl and methamphetamine. And another main reason as to why he died, not only from the drugs, was but because they did not check him at 60 minutes. They checked him at 65 minutes. The medical examiner stated that if he would have been checked on time, per protocol, at 60 minutes versus 65, he could have been revived. He was in custody for 4 days before he died. He had court the next day. So he had court July 21st, 2021, but he died July 20th. My last words to my mom before she told me my brother had passed away, she texted me and she was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just chilling with my neighbor. My neighbor's my best friend." And I was at her house outside on the patio furniture, and she just, it was like a regular day. She just casually texts me, "What are you doing?" I'm next door, and next thing you know, my best friend's car is pulling into my driveway with my other little brother, Saxon's little brother, and my mom coming out of the car, and she told me that my brother passed away. Well, my last words were, "I want to go to his court date tomorrow." I still don't understand how fentanyl and methamphetamine made it into San Diego County Jail when they have $1,000 scanner that scans the inmates. My mom has stated that Kelly Martinez says that fentanyl is not able to be picked up on that machine. So they need to do something to pick up fentanyl. And I also watch the deputies go by me time and time. I've been at the San Diego County Jail over a dozen times, and they walk by me on a day. Every time I'm there, I have a deputy that walks by me. They're either in full uniform or they have their backpack on and they're going to change inside, and nobody's searching those deputies. There's no dog. There's two different doors they go in. They go in where the inmates go in, and somebody lets them in from inside. No buzzer, no nothing. Or there's a door where they have their scanner in it. They can go in themselves. And I work at a medical marijuana dispensary, and nobody can, if anybody works there, you cannot go inside if you don't have your badge. You don't have your badge, you're not getting inside. But yet here at a jail, you can watch them go in and out casually. There's been time and time again where I've been outside to protest, and I'm like, you guys have Chipotle. Is that Chipotle or fentanyl? I mean, who's checking them? And they laugh. I was outside the jail the other day, and I had a sheriff deputy circling the block. He recorded us. He flashed his light at us. Anyways, my story, I just wanted to let you guys know that Saxon Rodriguez, he was definitely innocent. I saw the video that they would have used to his next court date, and he was definitely innocent. He didn't get to make it to his court date, and I still just wonder how he got those drugs inside of jail. Passed away.
Um, I don't know where you guys like me to stand. Right here. Um, Good evening. Um, my name is Sean Mills. I'm the little sister of Kevin Mills, my Tweety Bird. Um, Kevin was mentally ill. At an early age, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Um, at this time, he had a mental crisis back in 2020. We called PERS. PERS didn't show up. We tried to ask for help for him because we see that he was in a mental crisis. Usually every Friday, Kevin comes to my house, for him and my dad can go to the bank. They go eat, and they even take my little son. So a couple of Fridays go by, and there's no Kevin. And so my oldest son said, "Oh, something's wrong. If Kevin didn't come by to go to the bank with with Pops, something's wrong." So I decided to call the Central Jail. Kevin was there. It was Kevin's name, but it was the wrong birthday. So I went to go see Kevin in jail. This was in the summer 2020, around July and August, and he was there. So I went to see him. He was mentally incapable to come to the visit, and the sheriff came out and said, "Come downstairs. I want to talk to you." So I go downstairs because I'm just crying because I don't get to see my brother and I don't know what's going on. So when we go downstairs, they go, "What's wrong with him?" I said, he's schizophrenic. He's bipolar schizophrenic. I said, "Is there any way that you guys can get him help? I mean, because he's been off his meds." And he says, "Okay, well, no, we'll get him help." So as I was leaving, a nurse saw me, and she saw me crying. And she asked me, she said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I'm worried about my brother Kevin. Did he get the proper treatment?" She says, "Oh, don't worry. We'll take care of him." So he went to court in August. They found him mentally incapable of standing trial. And one of the things that the judge said, if Kevin didn't get his mental treatment or get help, it would be detrimental to his life. And that's what happened on November 11th, 2020. My parents got the phone call, and they said to my dad, and my dad was very upset. He's like, guy says, "Are you sitting down?" He said, "Yeah, what do you mean I'm sitting down?" He said, "Kevin's dead." And my dad says, "Wait a minute. You gonna call me at 2 o'clock in the morning and ask me, am I sitting down, and telling me my son is dead?" So when he called me, I knew something instantly was wrong because I heard my mother in the background crying. And I'm like, Dad, what's wrong? What's wrong? He said, Kevin's dead. So the next day, they went to go try to see Kevin, well, identify Kevin's body. But due to the wrong birth date, they wouldn't let him see him. And my dad was like, no, 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 no. This is my son. I'm going to see my son. Due to a clerical error, this is why it's so important for these bills to pass. A clerical error. It's not like Kevin hasn't spent time in Central Jail before. And when he went to court, he was supposed to be sent to Patton, which is a mental institution. He didn't make it. My brother, the youngest brother of ours, and my dad, they talk about the autopsy and all this other stuff that they got, but it took a year to even get it because of the wrong birthday. We know for sure that he didn't get his meds. He didn't get the patent. The doctor came to see him, and due to the wrong birthday, the doctor couldn't find him. We know he got assaulted in holding tank, but we cannot get any records, no film, no recording, anything of Kevin's procedure. My dad asked for all these things. My dad talked to the investigator reporter, and the investigator reporter informed my dad that whatever he found, that he'll be able to give it to him. But then he calls my dad back stating that he can't give him the information. He said, I'm sorry. He said, but wait a minute, you told me you can give me the information. But he told my dad, we couldn't give you anything. They wrote to Kelly Martinez. Again, due to the wrong birth date, they sent a letter to Kelly Martinez to change the date. It's so hard because we know he got beat up. They left him in a cell like an animal. He was mentally insane. They said they walked past him, his cell, and he was fine, but then they came back that he was in mental crisis. They said they called UCSD to come revive him, and he went to USD, and that's where he passed. Again, it is very important for these bills to pass, because when they're mentally ill in a crisis, there's nothing we can really do as family but to try to ask for support. Because if they don't have their consent for them to know what's going on, we can't know anything. And he wasn't even supposed to be in jail. There's no one in there to understand mental crisis. There's no one to know if you have schizophrenia, if you have Alzheimer's, or something's going on with you, and they just going to identify you as you being drunk, but not having a mental illness. I miss my brother so much, and it's like we're not going to probably get any clarity due to the fact it was a clerical error. We haven't seen no video video. And my dad and us we are still searching for answers, and it's not like we're ever going to get closure. And I miss my Tweety Bird. He was our protector. He was so sweet. I have his recording on my phone. Hey, Turkey, did you get your Three Musketeers I left you? Oh, I'm going to bring you guys pizza and everything. He took care of us, me and my younger brother, and we have an older brother. I have three brothers, and I'm the youngest of all of them. And it's very important that somebody be in there to identify if you need to be here in jail, or you need to be somewhere we can be treated. If they can give all these jail people educations, a tablet where they can call you and all these other stuff, why can't we have somebody in there to help the mental illness? Because that is a very serious condition that not only that the person's going through, the family's going through, because we try to get help and we can't help. And so we're searching. And in PERS, I'm so disappointed in PERS because they didn't show up. Instead, that showed up was two cops like, oh, we could take them. And my brother was like, nah, we're not taking my brother. We're waiting for PERS. But they never showed up. Um, no family should ever have to get that phone call in the middle of the night. And if Kevin would have just got his help, maybe he would have been here today. If they would have just had somebody on their board that can identify what's going on with these people. We know for a fact he didn't get his medicine. He didn't get medical treatment. We know he got beat up. We know we can't get his records. We ain't seen no video. And it's devastating. And another thing we found out, his legs were swollen. And he had a bruise on the side of his head. We can't get the answer. So it's very important for these bills to pass because we need clarity. We need to understand what's going on with our loved ones. And so, yes, support these bills, make them pass because this is devastating. For these last 2 years, my brother on Kevin's birthday literally had a mental breakdown. He cried. I'm sitting up there calling him for our brother's birthday, and I have to be strong for my big brother because he was crying because our brother is gone. So I had to be strong for him. Got to be strong for my dad. Got to be strong for my mom. And even my dad got sick trying to find the answers about what happened to our brother. So he got to step back from the fight, but he's there. But that's why I stepped in because my brother took care of me and I need to take care of him to get his story out there for no other family can go through the crisis that we went through.
Yes, hello. I'm David Settles. I'm the brother of Matthew Settles, who's my younger brother. He passed away almost a year ago today at the George Bailey jail. So my brother also had schizophrenia. My brother went to UCLA when he was diagnosed back in college with schizophrenia. He went in and out of treatment. He had a really hard time. He was in the county mental hospital, even in the state mental hospital for 5-6 years. It was just a roller coaster for our whole family. My mom, my dad, my older brother. Matthew was able to actually graduate from college. He was in and out of the hospital and yeah, a lot of crazy things he did. But the fortunate thing for us, we obviously back then he was treated. He was getting, he was schizoaffective, but he was getting the medicine and actually we got him he had many, many good years. He was in boarding homes here in San Diego. And during that time, my mom every week went to help Matthew. And all of us did. For some of the time I was out of town. When I came back and I had kids for all these good years that Matthew was in the boarding home, every couple of weeks I would be going to pick him up with my kids. My kids grew up with him, knew him. He went on all, vacations with us. So we were really close. Growing up, he and I shared a bedroom up until we all left. So I was very, very close. Our whole family was close with Matthew. So he had many good years, and then two years before he died, he had another crisis, and this is just common what happens with schizophrenia and the mentally ill. And he was just thought people were imposters, and so they had to commit him back into the county mental hospital. And, it was hard. And he would lash out. And soon after going back in, he was completely emaciated. He was going through a number of issues. So he was down to, even though he was 6'1", was like 150 pounds. He was like a rail, but he thought people were imposters. He would hit people. One time he hit me, one time he hit my mom, but we knew it was, he it was off his treatment. But because of that, he did eventually get into the jail, but he was able to get out of it, and he was back in the county mental hospital here for a couple months, and he was getting stabilized. He was actually, wasn't completely well, but at least he was doing fairly well. He had 2 good months there when they showed up with a subpoena to take him back to jail because some incident 2 months earlier, he had hit somebody. And so he went back to jail, after already having been in jail. But, and that's, we knew my mom was hysterical. We all knew, it could be a death sentence. Matt, at that, as we had said, the death rate in San Diego jails is the highest in all of California. My mom reads the San Diego Union every morning. She knew what it was like. She was frantic. We called, the jails, even before. She was always calling and trying to reach Matt. But when he went back in, and which we didn't know, we never heard from Matthew again. That was 2 months before he died. And that was the last we heard of him before he died. So, it was bad timing. We were out of town for a week, and then my mom got COVID, but, she was calling every day. She did not know that, he had been transferred to George Bailey. So I think a couple of weeks after they moved him back to the jail. Now, why? And we found out afterwards too. He had been, when he went back to the jail, then they immediately moved him out of the psych unit and put him in the general population. Well, 3 days after he had been back in jail, he was assaulted and he got like 57 stitches. Of course, we didn't know any of this. We didn't find out till after he died. And we didn't hear this from the jail. We only got it because we got the medical report because they had to send him to the hospital outside the jail. But we didn't know any of this. So why he was ever transferred from also the downtown jail to George Bailey, where there is no psych unit and it's further away from the family, harder for us to contact, impossible to contact. My mom tried every day. We do not know. So we still, to this day, don't really know what Matthew went through for those 2 months. And that's why I'm here in these bills we're talking about and the reform we need. I mean, just transparency of knowing what was happening to Matthew. He died in solitary confinement. We don't know how he got there. He was back in the hospital like 3 days prior to that, because we saw the medical report. We do know, in the jail, he ended up dying. He had his shirt around his neck from a third bunk, and that's how he died. But what led to it? That's what we want to know. So that's why I'm here. We need transparency in the reform so that, jail isn't a death sentence. And, these people going through crises, it should not be a death sentence. They shouldn't be in jail. That's not where they're going to get the proper treatment. So, that's my brother. And thank you for letting me, share my story.
My name is, I'm the mother of Jeremy Smith, who also suffers with, he also suffers from, learning disabilities. He was in special ed all his childhood, all the way to high school. And, when he was in 7th grade, he was also diagnosed with ADHD. As a teenager, he developed schizophrenia, schizoaffective bipolar type. When he was 18, he was arrested with a charge due to his mental illness. At the time, I had just got him to get on medication. He wasn't fully restored. And so what happened, they didn't have mental health court in 1997. And so I convinced him to take a plea, thinking it was going to be the easier, softer way. He would be home in 3 years. So what happened to Jeremy, once he went into to prison, it's like his records didn't follow him. I would call, they would say he doesn't have schizophrenia, when all that happened, he completely exacerbated in the prison system. They're very ill equipped. And what happened, the mentally ill in prison do not know how to follow directions. And so this went on and went on, getting in trouble up to 2018 with the support, my support, and fighting for him. We finally got him paroled. Well, when he came home, he started decompensating. And I would call his parole officer and said that we need to get him back on his meds. I don't think he's taking it right, because people with schizophrenia and severe mental illness do not like the side effects. And it's typical for them not to want to take their medication. So he started decompensating. He was on the streets. And what happened, he was arrested for a dirt and dagger. He never attacked anyone. He had it in his pocket. He was on his way to see the parole officer. And of course, my son is 6'4" and black. So that's not going to help none. So the police, they stopped him. He stuck out like a sore thumb. They checked him. He had the pocket knife. So off to jail he goes on a violation. This is in 2018. He stayed 9 months before even going to mental health court. And I had filed a motion to intervene because I've been through this road with my son. They don't care. They're ill-equipped, and they totally exacerbate them and make them worse. So what happened, he was found incompetent to stand trial. It was very evident. And so they said this is 9 months in jail. George Bailey, you heard David say they don't have no psych treatment there. In the hole, isolation, exacerbating more. Okay, this was already 9 months. They're sending him to Patton to get restored and bring him back. Well, it took another 3 months before he even went to Patton. He was 2 weeks short of a year. He was primed and ready. So the first day when he got to Patton, he told them he does not take his medication crushed. So the staff member decided to take him down. Someone hurt their knee in the process. Mind you, this happened the first day he got there. It was predictable. So by the 4th day, they indicted him. He's in Rancho Cucamonga jail. It's West Valley Detention Facility. And why is it that if he's incompetent to stand trial in San Diego, they allowed him to take a plea? He never got medication. This is a system. The mentally ill are very vulnerable. Meantime, he's going to prison, and in San Diego, they're wanting to find out. They're trying to find him because the charge is still there, the dirt and dagger. Well, you know what? They couldn't find him. They knew he was on his way to prison. So what they did, they dropped the charge. Here's my son going back to prison with another number. He's been in prison since 1997, being exacerbated and abused and tortured. So off he goes to prison to do 2 years. During that time in prison, people with that take psych medications cannot be out in the sun. He passed out. The correctional officers effed him up. His face was big. They tried to make it seem like it was him when it was their being ill-equipped, doing what they do. So my son did come home, but He went to the state hospital, which he's been before at Atascadero. And I had already told his counselor, the parole department, he's not from San Bernardino. So what do? They parole him to San Bernardino, where he has no support. So he starts decompensating last November. There was a blackout at the house where he was at, a sober living or some kind of place there. And I was trying to get the guy to know that I was trying to find out where he could, because my son was in crisis. He didn't hurt anyone. He was just in mental crisis. And so they violated him. He went back to jail and they violated him on this. And what do? After he's so decompensated, he doesn't want to come out to his cell, not even to go to court. So by the time they do get him to come out, video court, they give him like 3 months violation. This happened 5 times. And what do? I went to San Bernardino the first time. I was there at midnight because I didn't know if they were going to just let him out into the streets. And they didn't even tell me. I was there at 12 o'clock midnight. I was talking to the parole officer at 2 o'clock in the evening. He says, oh, I just got an alert. They're taking Jeremy. They didn't tell me. They gave me the wrong place where it's a stabilization unit where they just take them and my son could walk out. Okay. So they give me the wrong information. I'm in Rancho Cucamonga. They sent him to San Bernardino, to the Arrowhead. And so it takes me 30 minutes to get there. By the time I got there, he had already left. I had to file a missing persons report. This happened 5 times. This last time we went to court again. It's redundant. And the parole officer's supervisor had promised me before that they were going to pick him up. They weren't available. I kept calling 4 days prior to that. Where does he go? He's out in the streets again, like he's supposed to know where he's at to go report within 24 hours or 48 hours to the parole department. He doesn't know the area. So now when I went to go see my son, like I said, this is the 5th time. My son looks like a Nazi prisoner. Nothing but forehead all sucked in. Cheryl was there with me. We went to go see him. I'm scared my son's going to die. So they gave him 180 days. And it was only evident he's incompetent. The prior time to this, when I went and I spoke up in the court, they could have very well arrested me. But the judge asked me to state my name or whatever. And I said, they're railroading my son. And the public defender says, I agree. First of all, there's a case that happened in the 90s when the whole state was taken over from the feds because it was found that they were cruel and unusual. People were dying left and right in the prison. Okay, so he falls under the Armstrong case because he has learning disabilities. They're supposed to accommodate him. What they're doing to him, they're violating him from his the American Disabilities Act. And this is what they're doing. We had a bill last year, AB 1630, the vulnerable rights to a fair trial, which was pertaining to my son's case, because they're railroading them and they're taking advantage of them. And a lot of families don't know how to defend their loved ones. And this is what's happening. And a lot of them are dying. And right now, I'm scared this is going to happen to my son. The public defender's office in San Bernardino, they don't want to talk to me. They said that my son said that not to talk to me. That's not true. My son is incompetent. I faxed them over a durable power of attorney that I have over my son. They still didn't want to talk to me. They know they're wrong. Now, I'm going tomorrow where someone's going to help me. I'm going to be up in their face. I have to do everything that I have to do. And I even let the public defender's office know, I don't want my son to die. Don't let my son die. He better not die. I'm telling you, this is not right. How long are they going to keep doing this? They've been doing this to him since he was 18. It's a revolving door. If you don't have mental illness going into prison, you definitely have it coming out. And then for someone to have learning disabilities, schizoaffective, and he's being exacerbated, maced and extracted. No. And this has to stop. This has to stop. We need these bills that they mentioned, they're important, but I'm going to tell you right now, we need to do a lot more. It's not over. Slavery has not ended, it just has evolved and it's taking everyone. We just need to stand up and do what's right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Cheryl Canson. Hi, I'm Cheryl Canson, and I am honored to be able to tell my story because a lot of times when people go to prisons and jails, they're unheard. They always need, especially if they suffer with mental illness before they got into jails and prisons. And my son suffered mental illness even before as children. They have clinical diagnosis. One of them has bipolar and the other one has schizophrenia. And one was born with a physical disease as well as a mental disease. And so I want to make people aware that the mental health system and the criminal justice system are two conflicting purposes. The mental health system's purpose is to restore and heal, and the criminal justice system is to punish, punish, and more punish. I'm wondering why, before they're incarcerated, the mental health treatment is so different. But once they're incarcerated, they're treated inhumane. They're treated like they don't count. They're unheard. They're unable to tell that they're in a mental health crisis, that they're suicidal, that they feel unsafe, which they teach you on the outside that those are symptoms and triggers that need to be expressed and cause people to treat them accordingly. When you have a mental health illness, you're always dealing with and connected to triggers, symptoms, and behavior. And those very behaviors are punished in jails, prisons, and detention centers. That is why they do not belong there. It is my desire that people that run prisons, jails, and detention centers get treated, get educated on how to treat people with mental health illnesses because it affects the way they think, the way they feel, and the way they respond. And if you're not familiar or educated on how to treat them, you can become a problem. You can talk them down off a ledge and save their lives, or you can push them right over that ledge and cause their lives to end. Once I became friends and familiar with these families here who lost their loved ones' lives, a lot of them suffered mental health issues. And because they were ignored, abused, tortured, neglected, they lost their lives. I stand here with a collage of my family members still striving and barely living with their mental illness for those very reasons, neglected, unheard. There should be like a panic button so they can push it if they are in an emergency crisis situation, which they constantly are. If they're suicidal, if they feel unsafe, there should be a button they can push. I recommend a suicide prevention hotline inside of jails and prisons that they can call someone and get someone on the other end that's live and empathetic and compassionate and say, hey, I need help. Does anybody care? There's none of that. You can call the prison and speak to the medical staff and they tell you, give them 5 days to call you back. So how can I tell them that my family member is in emergency crisis? They called me and let me know I heard it. That's not okay. It's inhumane. It's unfair. That's a violation of the human and civil rights. Please do what you can, people of influence, to make changes to this system. It's for it. It affects families. And my son's sisters and little brothers, we're all affected. Our lives are changed forever. And knowing what could happen, their lives could be lost inside institutions. It's devastating. I'm pleading to people who can make a change. Please make a change. Vote for these laws. I've had to call the prisons and say, you know, my son changed his medication. They're like, oh. I'm like, do you know there needs to be monitoring and assessing once you change the medication to see how their bodies respond to new medication, to see what kind of adverse effect it may have on them? I'm like, really? You don't know that? So how safe do I feel for them? You know, things like that they should know. It just, it needs to be a change. People don't care about people with mental illness because they're afraid of them. They call the police on them when we need to have a better system where the police don't come, but the hospital should come to them. If they don't go to the hospital, there needs to be a system where the hospital comes to them. Or people on the streets or family members need to be more equipped to help them get better. They deserve it. They didn't ask to be born like this. I thank you all for listening and caring. Thank you.
We're going to hear from Saxon's mother, Sunday, on the Zoom right now.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
I can hear.
Yes, we can.
All right. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Sunday Weddle. I am the mother of Saxon Rodriguez, also a member of the North County Equity and Justice Coalition Saving Lives in Custody campaign. My daughter Sabrina spoke on her brother Saxon already, just kind of to explain the how and the where that he died. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that that my son Saxon was arrested here in Chula Vista while he slept peacefully in the park. And I feel like Saxon was an easy target, as are many homeless here in San Diego and Chula Vista. And I think that his drug addiction contributed to that arrest. I feel that he was being made an example of. I know that Saxon was targeted by the HOT team here in Chula Vista, the homeless outreach team. They had wanted him to be an informant and find out where the drugs were coming from, and Saxon refused that. And he was scared, and he was scared for his life. And I really believe that he was wrongfully arrested. It took us 6 months to actually get anything back from the medical examiner regarding his autopsy as to his cause of death. During that time, Sabrina and I were able to retrieve his property, and it hadn't even been properly searched. It actually had the drugs that Saxon used inside the backpack that was returned to us. So I know that the drugs that Saxon overdosed on were not his, that he did get those drugs in jail. Since Saxon's death, the jails have now implemented the Narcan being available to the inmates. And even though that's progress being made, it's just not fast enough, because if that had been available when Saxon was there just a few months prior, he may have survived, because he would have had, him and his cellmates would have had access to the Narcan. But the problem with that too is that just this year alone, there's been over 100 Narcan deploys in the San Diego jails. I mean, in my opinion, that's still just too much drugs coming into the jails. And we have Kelly Martinez refusing to properly scan, not just the inmates. She doesn't want to scan the staff or any of the people that are coming, the visitors coming in. So like Sabrina said, Kelly Martinez has stated herself that these scanners, these $200,000 scanners, one or two in each jail, 7 jails total in San Diego, they don't detect fentanyl. So what needs to happen is we need the canines. They're already on staff. They're already on payroll, so they need to be brought in, and they need to be properly searching the inmates, the deputies, any visitors that come into the jails. So what we're hoping is that with the passing of these bills, that things like this can be implemented and lives can be saved. And I think that the idea also of having some kind of system in the jails where inmates that are having a mental health crisis and that are contemplating suicide can get access to help, because clearly the jails are understaffed when it comes to mental health professionals inside. I mean, I know they're understaffed completely all the way across the board, but there really does need to be some kind of system where people can get help, because it's not just drug overdoses, it's suicides. And I believe there's also a lot of aggression going on inside, and it's being covered up. I mean, when Saxon died, he was on the 4th floor of Central Jail, and they shut down the whole entire 4th floor. They interviewed every inmate on the 4th floor, every deputy, every nurse and doctor. But despite having so many eyes on the inmates, cameras and everything else, they don't know where the fentanyl came from. They don't know how Saxon got it. I mean, Saxon was in jail for 4 days. He would have been withdrawing off of opiates. He would have been having hallucinations, body tremors. He wouldn't have been able to eat or drink. He was on the top bunk of a 3-bunk cell. He would not have been easily able to get up and down, to get food, water, to use the bathroom. I do feel like my son struggled those 4 days that he was there. And I don't think that he got the help that he needed, whether it was medical, mental, physical. And I did try and save my son. And when I found out that he was in jail, I actually sighed a sigh of relief, thinking that he would be safe and that he would be okay, and that I could try and get some resources together to be at his court date and beg the judge for something like drug court to get him into rehab. And I really never thought that I would get such terrible news that he would have died in a place where there was so many eyes on him, that there were people assigned to his floor, to his module, to his unit, to his cell, and that he somehow still died. They deployed, I believe it was 7 to 9 Narcans into him. and he still didn't survive. And I just never would have thought that something like that could have happened in a facility like that. But I just really wanted to make sure everyone knew that Sabrina and I are not going to go away. We're going to keep showing up, and we're going to keep speaking out, and we are going to follow every assembly bill and Senate bill that's proposed, and we're going to be there when they pass cheering, because I hope that's what happens. And it will be really important for us and for the other in custody death families who have become family to us. And I thank you this evening for the opportunity to speak about my son, Saxon Rodriguez. May he rest in peace. And I also want to say recall Kelly Martinez. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes.
I just wanted to state, I actually received the names of the nurses and the deputies that were responsible for my brother the day that he died. And one of the nurses actually stated on a CLERB meeting that the best place to overdose is in jail due to the medical staff. And if you want to hear her state that, it's on YouTube. You can just look up the CLERB meeting, and her name is Melissa Burns. But the names of the deputies that were responsible for my brother are Brian Powell, Andrew Randovich, Maxwell Rimple, Andre Wanzer, and the 9 nurses. 9 in a hospital. You don't even have 9 nurses. Just so you know, I've been visiting my grandma I only visited her once because I like to make my statements accurate. But she doesn't even have 9 nurses, but the 9 nurses are Melissa Burns, Reggie Barreto, Carrie Cavello, Ria Encarnacia, Caitlin Hendricks, Marlene Mbanza, Kelly Payne, Levy Santos, and Chantel Williams. Caitlin Hendricks asked my brother the day before he died if he wanted a COVID shot. He stated no. If she was a nurse, that she would know he was either high or withdrawing that day. I have been actually, my Instagram gets constantly watched by these nurses because they're so mad I have their name. And I've actually been told that I'm not even supposed to share these names because it's in a sealed email that I had received by the liaison, but arrest me. I would love to go to jail. But again, Melissa Burns stated the best place for someone to overdose would be jail. And I'm not making these words up. You can literally find it on YouTube because I screen recorded it myself the next day. And I just want to follow by, Yusef said accountability. Me and my mom have taken accountability that Saxon had a problem, but who was his drug dealer in jail? Because we received his drugs back when he died. And this needs, this needs to stop happening. I'm so fixated on a robot message that I didn't get through everything that my mom said, but my brother was a human. He was 22 for 19 days before he died. I didn't get to tell him happy birthday before he died because I thought that I'd be able to find him again. And I didn't. The last place I saw him was at the funeral home. It should have been the medical examiner's office so that I can identify him properly. Seeing how she said her brother had a wrong birthday. They don't even let us see us until days after. We thought we were praying Saxon switch wristbands with somebody, but he didn't. But I just wanted to state that I have those nurses and deputies' names, and they're so mad I have them, and I will continue to state them.
I like to say one thing. My brother died in Central Jail. Maybe some of them nurses took care of him, but we'll never know. Like maybe took care of Kevin. We won't know.
And before we move into Q&A and a couple of folks who want to introduce themselves online, do any of you guys have anything to add? I know it's maybe just in case anything's come to mind that you wanted to share. Just want to give space. Okay. I'm gonna introduce one of our guests wanted to introduce themselves. Go ahead, Yasmin, and she'll be available to answer as we move into the Q&A. Yasmin can also field questions if you have questions for her.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I just want to start by saying thank you so much for being vulnerable, sharing the stories of your loved ones and your families. That's really heavy, and I appreciate you all lifting up their names and their stories. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Yasmin Abid. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator with the Office of the Commission on Police Practices, which is an independent citizens oversight body of San Diego Police Department that has investigatory review and auditing powers. And I want to name that the newly appointed commissioners will be having their first meeting on August 29th from 5:30 to 7:30. And our interim commissioners, the folks transitioning out, will be having their final meeting tomorrow. And I really want to encourage folks to come and share the stories of their loved ones. If they were with San Diego Police Department with the commissioners, whether it's the folks transitioning out or the folks transitioning in, because their stories are very important and we need to center their voices and your voices in anything we do moving forward. And I would also love to meet with you all and hear from you directly on what type of work you want to see the new commission do, what type of work you want to see the community engagement person, me, from the commission do, what type of events, workshops, presentations, etc. that you want to see moving forward. And I'll go ahead and drop my information in the chat, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you all have any. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
Yes. One great thing about these ASD community meetings, just want to say that, you know, in these meetings, our objective is to hold space and to make connections and to network. And so we're gonna, I'll go to Cheryl right now, and then we'll meet one other person who joined us online who wants something to say, and then we'll go to Yusef after that.
I just wanted to add that I am one of the new appointees on the CPP board that will be meeting on August 29th. We also have a big party planned for the community to support work in the community on August 26th. Excited. Please support. Thank you.
Okay, and next I'm going to go back to Yusef Miller.
Yes,
Yusef,
thank you
if
to
you
all
could-
the families.
If you could start your video, that'd be great.
Thank you to all the families who came from the SLICK campaign and Moms Against Torture and Treat Me, Don't Mistreat Me to show up for this program. Also I gave a list of people who couldn't be here today, but I also want to talk about two particular types of incidents. One from Tammy Wilson's husband, Omar Moreno Arroyo, who lost his life in jail as well. But he was arrested from home and taken to jail. He shouldn't have been arrested in the first place, and he lost his life in custody. He tried to say they arrested him from home for being under the influence, and they arrested him and took him to jail. His wife didn't know to not allow them to take her husband, but they did, and he lost his life in custody for after a short while in jail. And also, like I said earlier with Jennifer Schmidt, her father, Gilbert Gill, who lost his life, he actually died on Valentine's Day. So she has this horrible memory every Valentine's Day that her father lost his life on Valentine's Day in jail, but he was also arrested from home. And they couldn't, they tried to arrest him from home and they wouldn't allow him. They said, you know, he has schizophrenia. And the reason why he's acting out is because of his diabetes and his schizophrenia. They said, okay, we'll just take him to the hospital. So law enforcement took him to the hospital and then arrested him from there because they couldn't arrest him from home. So it's real, this serious issue that we've been dealing with as a campaign since 2020, and we'll continue to fight all these families that are here together, standing firm. And for those who couldn't make it for whatever reasons, we're all one team, one family, and we need all of your support to make these kind of things move forward. Put your whole heart and effort into attending the CLURB meetings, monthly CLURB meetings, the Civilian Law Enforcement Review Board, which has oversight over the Sheriff's Department, who are responsible for the jails, but also put your heart and your support into the CPP, who has oversight on the complaints against police department, which are two different departments, but still we all need to work together. As are also members of things like the Behavioral Health Advisory Board, and we're getting more people involved in that as well so that we can have a voice in all these different levels. So thanks again and appreciate everybody.
So I have actually made friends with one of the latest in custody deaths. I don't think it was the last one, but his name is Pedro Jr. He died at San Diego County jail, the same place that my brother passed away. And he actually committed suicide. He was in a 3-man cell and was, I don't want to go into details because it's not my place to go into details. I have asked his mother permission to speak on his situation, but he was able to commit suicide. He was in a 3-man cell. 2 of the other 2 bunkies had just got transferred out, and he was able to commit suicide. And I just wonder, like, were they also not doing their timely checks? How was this person able to commit suicide? He actually had brain damage and needed to be transferred out, where he died 2 days later. My neighbor had caught me right as I came home from a rally and was like, there was another in custody jail death. And I was like, I haven't read about it. And I waited for 2 days. And the moment it came out, I was like, I need to find this family. And he's actually, known in San Diego and, in like the rapper scene of San Diego. And he was very popular. There's Instagram, it's called Dago TV. They posted it and everything. And I made connections with that family. And you just, how are people able to commit suicide? How are people able to intake drugs? And, my brother passed away he overdosed a month before he died, and they were able to make it to a park, locate him, then insert the Narcan, and was saved there. How is this not being able to happen in a jail? And it's like, yes, people want to go on the comments and like, well, he did the drugs, he shouldn't have did them. You're right, he did do the drugs, but he's inside a jail. How are these drugs making it in? And we can't compare the inmates to the deputies at all. There's no record of, we can look at Alan Rosaisker or whatever his name was. He brought coke onto the premises, but we don't have record because they don't search the deputies. I just wanted to say that Pedro Jr.'s family, they're very much so active, and they'll be here one day.
So we have a question here in the audience from Lucilla. And raise your hand and just signal if anyone else wants to ask, but we'll ask her a question and then we'll give the families a chance to respond.
Thank you. Yeah, it's devastating hearing your testimonies. And one thing that really strikes is that most of these victims are people with mental health disabilities. And when I used to work at a facility, residential facility for people with mental health disabilities, and we had a client who I could see he was decompensating and he was getting worse. And I spoke with his nurse practitioner that used to come to visit him on a regular basis. And she told me, you have to call 911 when he has a crisis. And I said, I don't want to call 911 because calling 911 is a death sentence. And she says, no, 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 no. You just have to ask for PERT. But as you were saying, PERT doesn't always respond. Why? Because they have a skeleton crew of like 1 or 2 PERT officers for the whole county. At least, well, we were in an area where we were served by the sheriff's office, and you know, 9 out of 10 times we called 911, it was just the sheriff, no PERT. And that is another thing that we need to fight for more PERT personnel out there on the streets to be able to identify people who are going through a mental health crisis, because people like that cannot go to jail. People like that need to go to a mental health facility. And I mean, I could take a lot of time talking about the inadequate conditions at the residential facilities for mental health disabled people, but which is another issue that we need an oversight committee of citizens to go and check on those places, because the conditions, there's a reason why I'm not working there anymore, because I felt guilty. I felt guilty every time I went to work, because those people are not served properly either.
What I want to say, and it's a fact because I know, not only in the state prisons, there's no continuity of care, but at the state hospitals either. My son, for example, look what happened to my son. How could that happen at a state hospital where he's supposed to be sent to be restored mentally? And at Tascadero, there's no continuity of care. They see one doctor and they assign a certain treatment. By next week, it's someone else. It's lost in the shuffle, and they're criminalizing you with their pens, saying this and saying that. They're criminalizing people with severe mental illness. They're profiting, and this is unjust. This is not right, and people for some reason aren't aware. A lot of people aren't aware till it hits home. But we need to remember, we lead the world in mass incarceration. That alone speaks volumes right there. This is insane.
Hi, y'all.
Go ahead, Kat.
My deepest apologies. Unfortunately, my video needs to be off, but I appreciate hearing from Cheryl and many other families. My name is Kat. I film cops with my partner. We work on tenant issues, and we know that police and landlords kind of work hand in hand. James Lacey for a big example. But, you know, supporting families of people killed by police inside and outside of cells. So just wanted to say that we're here and in support.
Thank you, Kat. I'm going to go to Yusef now, and then we'll go back to questions in this room. Go ahead, Yusef.
Yeah, to the first question that about the MCRT. I'm sorry, about the PERT. Yeah, PERT has failed us on the streets, and therefore we are been pushing for the MCRT, the Mobile Crisis Response Team, because PERT also includes law enforcement. Sometimes you don't get an actual clinician or a technician in PERT. You'll get a PERT trained officer, and that's no good. A badge and a gun should not be in mental health crisis. So we went away from PERT to supporting the MCRT, the Mobile Crisis Response Team, and that is an effort to get the badge and a gun out of mental health treatment and response. So I just wanted to mention that towards that, and then the questioner also asked about a civilian board to look over and look into oversight for the mental health, and that's the Behavioral Health Advisory Board. It's open to the public. They meet monthly, and we advise and encourage our members and all of you, the public, to look into the Behavioral Health Advisory Board and join up and attend their meetings. And right now they're working on a way to get investigative authority to go in and look at the mental health situations in the jail. They're working on that now. But the only reason why they're working on that kind of stuff is because of people like us that raise that noise. People like us, people like you that raise those noises. The reason why our CLRB, the Civilian Law Enforcement Review Board, is more powerful now than they were in 2020, which is still not powerful enough, but more powerful now than they were in 2020 is because of people like us and people like you. So I just wanted to answer those 2 points. PERT, the better thing is MCRT, which we have now, and then the board, the Behavioral Health Advisory Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusef. We're going to go to a question here in the audience. You can introduce yourself.
Sergio Padilla. I made a career working with the sheriff department in downtown Central Jail at George Bailey and Las Colinas, and I worked with the inmates, and then I started working with the public. So when you go to the window for information, that's where I worked also. Right now, I went to the webpage for jail information, which you can find. It's available to the public. And in the middle, you're going to see public information plan. And on the public information plan, you're going to also see the medical and mental health services. Now, this is all in writing, all documented. It looks really cute because it's supposed to be in a plan, right? But it's ideal. I read it, and it's ideal. But when it comes to reality, for example, when someone's in jail, you don't expect anybody to be in jail. But when somebody's in jail, my recommendation was have your doctor call our doctor and enforce that doctor, give him the fax number, give him the contact number, and give him the watch commander name, because it's the doctor who has the authority. Also, it's an attorney. The doctors and the attorneys are the ones that have the authority. When it comes to us, the family members, when it comes to us, closer. When it comes to us, the family members, we are powerless because we are not the authority. So whatever you do and whatever you try, even if you write a letter, they're not going to respond to you. Trust me, I have tried it. And even working for the sheriff department on my behalf, it's called the silent denial. They don't respond. And if they do respond, it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 months, which I even sent certified letters and they did not respond. What I'm trying to say is you really need your attorney, and you need to inform your attorney, especially through a paralegal. And this way, you have to be specific. My style, I write letters, because if you do it verbal, which the sheriff department loves, it's not documented. It's a verbal conversation. Look at the webpage, sdsheriff.gov. You're not going to find an email because they don't want it to be documented, especially CC to the representatives. Look at the webpage of the sheriff. The only email you're going to find is webmaster, and doesn't even instruct it. It's the webmaster that's supposed to inform the department. But there are no emails on the webpage. And that should tell you something. They don't want it. They either want it postal or they want it verbal, because they don't want to be bothered with written documentation. Again, when dealing with policy and procedure with the courts, the people don't know that they have to go to their medical doctor, and they ask for a list and have the medical doctor fax the list of medication. Otherwise, it's going to take 2, 3, 4, 5 a week for them to finally get the medication. But you won't find that, what I just told you right now, in here. If you call right now and talk to a clerk, you won't find that with that information. When it comes to a daily process, they don't know about the medical attention. Trust me.
Yes, and Sergio mentioned he's yeah, and that he'd be willing to also meet in the future and share some of his wisdom that he's accumulated over the year, his career in the past. Yeah.
I was wondering, so how do you suggest the best way to
I just wanted to say a comment that they're actually enabling people to die on their watch, and not to communicate with them and what have you. I've actually called because my son was in there and he needed medical treatment. His the police had shot him, my other son. His stomach was extended. He looked like he was like 6 months pregnant, and they weren't doing anything. I threatened to call the police, not to call the police, to dial 911 because he needed emergency attention. Nothing happened. They said they wouldn't still let him out. So what I needed to do, we went to the board of supervisors. I went in there and I took pictures. I snuck a phone in there, took pictures of my son, and I went through them and said, if anything happens to my son, you guys are responsible. The guy that shot him and the sheriff's department. They're enabling death.
My recommendation is to have a role play of going up to the counter and just asking what's policy and procedure for to give medicine to the person. They're going to tell you, you get a piece of paper and you write it down, all the medicine, and then you tube it up to the medical. Well, no one's going to tell you have your doctor contact our doctor. No one's going to say this is the phone number, because when the doctor calls, they call to the main switch, and then you got to get transferred to the doctor. So it's a long way. So have a committee and role play. What is it that you need to do from beginning to end? Because the goal is to have the medication from the doctor within 24 hours. That's reasonable. That should be the standard. Ask if there's a standard. There is no standard. There is no time standard. So the committee should get together and role play. When somebody gets arrested, what is the procedure? And insist. I have to tell the sergeants, I have to tell the lieutenants on my personal issues. I need it in writing. Don't give me this verbal. I need it because I need to take your information. I need to take your information and I need to give it to the authority that I have to go to, which is an agency. So give it to me in writing. They hate to write reports. It's just but it's part of they have to write reports all the time, every day for every incident. So when it comes to the public, they don't want to my opinion, my experience, they don't want it. I have to force them to write the report for me because I need that report at my authority so I can give it to. And I even had a lieutenant contradict himself because he gave it to me in writing. And I had to tell the state representative, look, I have it in writing. And the lieutenant called me later on and apologized that he was wrong. Okay.
Okay. Question.
I guess I can just unmute right here. So this is Will. I'm not on the camera because I'm the camera operator. But I one comment first. I think it's so like just archaic that you need to send a fax to with their prescription information, because I mean nobody has a fax anymore. And then they hide their emails on their website too, so you can't communicate to them either. My question for you guys is, what communication methods have you found to be effective when actually like communicating with the prison system to make them do what they need to actually do?
So I actually have received the San Diego Sheriff's report, which seems like one of many, and I actually don't even have, me and my mom don't even have like a lawsuit against either Chula Vista or the San Diego Sheriff's, but I'm very proud. I decided to pick up the phone one day and call Kelly Martinez's office. And I was like, hello, I'm Sabrina Weddle. Saxon Rodriguez's sister, and the lady at the front, whoever answers the phone, just the regular clerk, she was like, well, who's your liaison? I was like, okay, so you didn't hear me. I don't have a liaison. I don't know who my liaison is. I'm asking you who my liaison is. You point me into the person, and I got forwarded to some voicemails. I left some voicemails, and I just kept saying, hello, on the internet. I just kept saying, Kelly Martinez said I have a liaison, and the liaison was going to give me information. Behold, our liaison was actually one of the people that told my mom that my brother had passed away. They were one of the people that came to her front door and told her my brother passed away, but they never mentioned that. The liaison, they never mentioned, hey, I'm the liaison, who you call for information.
Hello.
This is fun. So our liaison was actually someone who came to my front door, my mom's front door. It was a liaison, a sheriff's deputy, and then the funeral lady. I don't know what she's called. The chaplain, what's it called? I don't know, the funeral lady, but we didn't pick her. No, we didn't pick her though. But back to my point, the liaison never told my mom, hey, I am your liaison. So we went months and almost a year, I think, without knowing who our liaison was. And once I finally decided to call Kelly Martinez's office, and I was like, I want to talk to the liaison. I want to know information. Whole time that guy's like, oh, I talked to your mom back in 2021. And I'm like, no, you didn't. What's your phone number? I made my mom go onto her Android phone, type in this phone number, and pull up the thread. Yes, this man was her liaison, but he never stated he was the liaison. He said, hey, let me know if you have any questions. Why would we want to ask you any questions without us knowing that you were the liaison? You were a lieutenant, because they're lieutenants. Liaisons are lieutenants. I'm not going to call a lieutenant if I have any questions, because I've already been calling, other people. And I remember, so there was a detective, a liaison, and then the lady with the Bible. And I called Eric, which was the detective, the next day. And I said, hey, I have questions about my brother's death. He said on the phone, they should have gave you a card with a phone number on it. I said, yeah. Your card with your phone number, you were at my mom's door. And he said, oh, I'll give you a call back in a few. I'm on the other line. Anyways, when I called the months later, a year and a half, it was this year that I called, 2023, that I got this paperwork about the sheriff's report. I called, and I ended up getting Aldo Hernandez, which was our liaison, and he sent everything. He just one day just started sending all this paperwork, and it was the San Diego Sheriff's Report with no names redacted. And I've been thriving off that since. I had all of the inmates' names that they interviewed the day that my brother died. It had all of the nurses. It had all of the deputies. I don't think that I was supposed to get this information, but I did. I mean, I don't, we don't have a case when it comes to this, but I have their names and I will never forget them. And that's been my only communication, is calling Kelly Martinez's office and being like, give me this information.
With my brother, again, with having the wrong birthday, there was very little that we can get. And then my dad spoke to the investigative reporter. And again, he asked my father, told my father to give you information, but he came back and said he can't get information. So we can't get any information due to the fact that, again, they had his wrong birthday. The reporter didn't give my dad the information, so we're stuck. Well, they said we're like below the bottom of the poor. So it's hard. So again, a lot of them saying they got the videos and they got all these reports. And again, like you said, you're naming these people in Central Jail. These might have been people that helped my brother. I mean, that not helped my brother, but probably didn't treat my brother, but probably was there when he died, and we don't know. So there's a lot of stuff we can't answer to.
But as far as get an attorney, Chula Vista PD had literally, we filed everything that we needed to, because Saxon was arrested in Chula Vista and then taken to downtown where he died. But we filed all those paperwork when it came to getting an attorney. But Chula Vista PD literally sent us a letter and it said, you sue us, we'll sue you when you lose. We don't have money for that. Why even try?
Right, for real.
They blackmailed us. We have the letter. They say, you sue us, go ahead, good luck. And when you lose, we're going to sue you for everything for our time, for our money. We know Chula Vista PD, they got $1 billion budget. We don't have time for that.
Yeah, just a couple things. I just wanted to say, yeah, as far as communication, the only contact when Matt was in jail, while he was in the downtown jail, they had a psych unit, and they have a liaison for the mentally ill, and talking to them, we got my mom was able to call the lady who ran the psych unit, and she could just generally say, well, I can't tell you anything about Matthew. He was under conservatorship. She wouldn't say anything, but he's doing all right. She would just comfort my mom. So that was literally the only contact my mom tried to reach. Many other people, the conservatorship office was terrible. That was the only time. Once we never found out he was transferred to George Bailey. She could never reach anybody. We never heard from him the entire 2 months he was there. There was zero contact, even though she tried. So yeah, it was very limited. I do have to say, when he was downtown, the couple times I talked to him, I went to visit him, because there was visitors. The couple times he was able to call me because one of the staff was nice enough to hand. I'm like, how are you talking to me? Well, they're giving me their cell phone to allow me to talk out. So there was some, a couple people who helped out who worked down there. But yeah, there was zero contact other than that. And the one last thing I just wanted to say was, as far as you were talking about getting the right meds. I mean, one thing that I found very, very frustrating, Matthew being in the mental health facility and him getting bounced around quite a bit. And even when he was in boarding homes, he was being taken, his meds was passed around. It was extremely frustrating because every place had a different or it would transfer doctors, and they would never write down. Never did. I said, can't we get print? I mean, this is all county. Never will they ever print out, say, oh, here's the meds he's taking. So it was all you press them. It takes a lot of energy to get them to verbally tell you. And then, you're trying to write it down. You're not getting the right, and they don't tell you exactly how much he's taking. They constantly are changing it. I mean, it's just terrible. And when he went into the prison, we never, ever found out. We have no idea what treatment he got. And the conservatorship did not help one bit with that.
Just want to say thank you again for everyone being here. And it's impossible for us to know what you've been through, but just this little window has been incredibly enlightening, and just want to affirm that we stand with you. And this is, well, we don't have enough time in this meeting to do all of the work. This is just the beginning, and anyone who wants to get involved further in the Saving Lives in Custody campaign can email us at activistsandiego.org, or just talk to us after this meeting ends. I'm going to ask a question, and then maybe a comment, and then we're going to go to Yusef to close it out. But my question for each of the family members here is, you've been forced into activism by this situation. And I'm curious as to what that has been like for you and what you've learned about, or any observations about organizing activism, any requests of things that you particularly want, specific asks of how we can help you. Just kind of want to give you time to, step back even from the situation, but now as your new role of as an organizer, just want to give you space to comment on that. If we can go this way.
Okay, let me, yeah, I think, as you said, kind of, thrust into this, but, so far, yeah, it's been a year for me. So, it's just been very healing, I guess. First off, yeah, meeting all the impacted families and gaining strength. Definitely that's something I see, number of these people I've met, I've kind of learned from all of them. All of them have been part of this group prior to myself. So I think I'm the newest one here. So yeah, it's been great to get their energy and also, learn about their situation. So yeah.
Thank you. I just thank everyone for your empathy and compassion and for listening and caring. It's what it takes. We have to jump in. Things that affect one of us affects us all, and we have to jump in here. And I wish the room would be filled, because one thing that happens to one of us affects us all in one way or another. And just hurts my heart that a lot of people don't know that we all need to be heard. We all are affected. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, as for me and my journey with my son, I've been fighting for my son since I knew that the jail and the prison have been exacerbating him to the point to where he could very well commit suicide or be killed. This is very impactful to me. I've been doing this since he was 18. He was born in 78. It's over 25 years. All his adult life in prison, suffering, being tortured, being treated like an animal, being dumped off in a place where he doesn't know anyone. He's in mental crisis, treated like a dog. We don't even treat our animals like that. At 104-degree weather. And for me too, I have to do everything in my power to fight for my son. Otherwise, I can't live with myself. I already lost my brother in 1997 for medical neglect from George Bailey. He needed medical treatment. They didn't give it to him. He went to prison. A year later, he died. Lost over 100 pounds. I still hear my mom saying, "Se murió Richard," crying, and he died. That's with me. My mom died shortly afterwards from grief. And I suffer a lot of depression. If I could trade places with my son, I would. He doesn't deserve this. He's been going through hell all his adult life, suffering, being criminalized, being exacerbated behind his mental illness. It's crazy. It's crazy. And to be honest, sometimes I get some crazy thoughts because of what they're doing to him. And I say this to put it out there because I'm human too. That's my family. And over the journey, I've met people that lost their loved ones in jail because they committed suicide or the correctional officers killed them. I feel powerless sometimes. I have to do whatever I have to do, whatever it takes. And thank you, everyone, for listening and for your care and concern. Thank you.
Well, the torch was actually passed to me. My dad, he's a very strong man, and he found this group. But like I said, he worked so hard to try to find the answers for my brother's death that it made him sick. So I stepped up. He says, I can't do it, going back and forth to the attorneys and to the doctor's office and trying to get the answers to your brother's death, it really almost killed him. So now he has to take care of my mom and my other brother, and I had to be the strong one. But I never would have thought my brother would have passed away in jail. And this group right here, we're connected. Hearing the stories of what Cheryl and Gina's going through is like deja vu. And hearing David talk about his brother, and it's like the same thing I was going through with my brother. So it's giving me strength to tell my story, because another family shouldn't have to go through this. And I really don't believe my brother should have died in Central Jail. I think he should have been here. I think he should have got the proper treatment. So just being here, telling my story, is making it easier for me to handle my brother's death. And knowing that I might not get the right answers, at least I'm seeking answers, and maybe one day I will be able to get them.
As far as the question, I definitely think I was forced into activism. I'm not forced, but I just definitely didn't know what was going on in San Diego County jails. I didn't even used to like people knowing my last name. Now I have to introduce my whole self and my brother. But I just want to make sure that, that people that go through what we go through know they have support. I remember not knowing what to do when Saxon passed away. I remember that Wednesday, July 21st, when he should have had a court, just driving all throughout San Diego downtown, trying to figure out, okay, well, even if he didn't have belongings when he got arrested, he had clothes, and I want those clothes. I wear this necklace that I got from San Diego sheriffs once he passed away, and this was Saxon's necklace. And it's just little things like that. Like, some families don't even know that there's belongings to gather. There's pieces of your loved one that you need to gather. Like, they just think they died in San Diego Central Jail or in the sheriff's custody, and that's that. No, there's so much more to what happened. And I just want to continue to, and like my poster says, somebody died this year, 7/20/2023. They were number 11 to pass away in San Diego County Jail. My brother was number 7. There's no change happening. How did we jump? My brother was number 7 this year on the same day I left San Diego County Jail. As I yelled at every car that came in, make sure they get their mental evaluation, because they just started mental evaluations. They just started drug testing when they get in intake. If Saxon would have been drug tested when he was in intake, they would have known he was a fentanyl user. But Chula Vista PD told us, oh, well, we knew it was Saxon. So if you knew Saxon, then you knew he had an addiction. You knew he had a problem. You would have gotten him help. And I will continue to say his name and fight for change, even if they have a mental health crisis or they're addicted to drugs. These are humans. At the end of the day, they're humans. And people want to be under the comments on Facebook like, oh, we save taxpayers' money. No. I'm going to make sure they come for multi-millions.
Thank you. Your mother actually added some of her thoughts in the chat on Zoom, and so I'll share that she said that she had to find herself again after the devastating loss of Saxon in order to find truth, answers, and justice for him. And that after the initial shock wore off, she found Yusef Miller. and he lit a fire under her feet to begin the journey of activism, educating herself and others about injustices that occur in the corrupt jail system. People should be shocked at the inhumanity that occurs. We need to expose them and continue to expose the truth. So I want to, as we close out, I'm going to bring back Yusef Miller, and with a amazing, huge shout out and thank you to brother Yusef Miller, who is wears so many hats and is a champion for the people. And so back to you, Yusef, to close out the meeting.
Okay, thank you. And to one of the questions that was earlier, what do we do? How do we get our voices heard? The only platform we have is the press. The only platform we have is the Union Tribune. Going to the boards of supervisors and to our elected officials, legislation is the only voice we have. Because remember, the sheriff's department is an elected official. That person is a politician, and they do dirty politics just like the rest of them. So sometimes, most times, we have to go over their head. And if it wasn't for going over their head and outside the system, that no one would have ever known or really rallied behind us the way they have. So we want to thank everybody, all of San Diego, for doing all of that. And we love platforms like these for Activist San Diego, KNSJ, and places like this that gives us the voice to speak out. So thank you everyone for coming out here. And as you can see from all these stories, these are just a few of many, many stories over many, many years that have been going on, not only in San Diego County, who was the #1 in custody death rate in the entire state of California, but Riverside County was the #2 highest in custody death rate in the entire state of California. And LA County also high in custody death rate. So this is going on all over the state, but here in southern San Diego, those 3 counties and more, are coming together to speak as one voice. You guys have heard about here in San Diego County, but this group right here, the Saving Lives in Custody campaign, we are talking to the families in Riverside. So our families and the families in Riverside are working together. And these families here, San Diego County and Riverside County, we are in conversations and meetings and rallies in LA with them as well. So it's not just localized, it's not just a silo, because we're pushing state level legislation. So I want to thank all of the families for coming out and joining us here and sharing their story. I know it gets tough. You have to tell this story over and over again, but like they said, it is a therapeutic type of event that this is, and a family type of event that we come together and love on one another and support one another, not only once a month, but we are talking and chatting almost every day, just busting it up on chat and laughing and talking and also educating each other. These families are amazing. They are activists, and they are making moves legislatively throughout the state. So I want to thank you, Activist San Diego, for having us. I want to thank all of our guests for being here with us. And we have a Facebook page, Saving Lives in Custody. The North County Equity and Justice Coalition, who are the sponsors of the Saving Lives in Custody campaign. So see us there. You can find out what's coming up and what's going on with us, and also with Activist San Diego, because we post on Activist San Diego as well. And keep your ear to the street of KNSJ to hear what's going on throughout our county.